Now, for your entertainment pleasure, an audio murder mystery starring a full cast of suspects. The Death of Dr. Davidson. Hannah Higginbotham, long-serving housekeeper to the Davidson family, is the last to speak to Inspector McTavish. We join them in the kitchen, where they are seated at a small breakfast table.
Miss Higginbotham, may I offer you my handkerchief?
Thanks ever so much, Inspector. I'm sorry, I just can't stop blubbering. I must look a right mess.
It must have been very upsetting, discovering the doctor's body.
Oh, I screamed my head off. I'll never forget it. I go to my grave seeing that horrible scene. And knowing it with a cocoa. With everyone looking at me like I'm the one that done it. I can't make head nor tails of this, Inspector. God is my witness. I can't account for it. I swear on my mother's life I didn't kill him. You just have to believe I'd never do such an horrible thing.
You must have been very upset by Dr. Davidson's announcement over dinner last night.
Well, yeah, naturally, but you must understand I've known him 30 years or more. I'm used to him by now.
Oh? Were these dramatic announcements a common occurrence, then?
Not as bad as last night, and not common, I would say. It were only that he'd been so very ill this last year, and his temper often got the better of him. He were very private, secretive sort of man. I think he were just finally letting his temper out more often than he used to, is all.
He was ill, you say? Do you know anything about his condition?
Oh, no, he never shared anything like that with me. I just know there were a few appointments to see some specialist or other, and some of those X-ray thingies came back courier for him not long ago, but he didn't seem to be ill at all lately. For all I know, they were in aid of someone else altogether. As I said, I never knew a thing about his medical practice.
I see. So you were surprised by his decision to disinherit his family and sell the estate?
Surprised by what he said, certainly, but I do believe, and make no mistake, as heartless as he seemed, he would never have gone through with it. He were all bluster, in his heart a very vulnerable sort of man. After his wife died, he were never the same. She doted on him from what I understand and from what the children said. He just wanted to be loved. He could be right selfish and cold, but that was just his way. He didn't know how to look beyond himself, if you know what I mean. When I were a girl growing up, there were a young lad in our village that had some sort of problem. You know, we never wanted to ask, and his mother never said naught about it, but it were like he just stopped growing at a certain point and weren't never going to get any bigger. He were only about 4 foot tall, even as a teenager, little scrawny lad, and he were a young man in his head, but he looked like a little boy. That's how I thought of Mr. Davidson, only the other way round. He looked like a grown man, but in his head he was just a little boy.
And little boys can be petulant, selfish and rude.
But lovable too, mind, in their own way. You can't blame them, can you? They don't know any other way. They just want someone to love them.
I see. Tell me, was this the first time he mentioned ending your employment with him?
No. Sometimes he'd get cross and tell me I had to go. But he'd always settle down and try to make amends, even if we were all gruff and grumbly about it. He wouldn't say he were sorry, exactly. He would just always hard to explain if you didn't know him as well as I did. He'd go on shouting at me for something and I'd start to cry. I never could stop the waterworks, it's my curse. And I'd go off and sulk, and then later he'd come by the kitchen and look all red-faced and uncomfortable, and he'd ask all polite, like if I wanted to take a day off or go to the pictures, he'd pay for it, or something like that. It was his way of making things right. Nothing would ever said out loud, if you know what I mean. But I understood him, and that's how I know he would have done the same thing with this horrible to-do. He wouldn't have changed his will, he wouldn't have sold the place and thrown me out. I know he wouldn't have.
And you say he was secretive?
Well, as I said, he never liked to say anything directly. Sometimes, for example, he'd leave a draft of a letter on his desk right out in the open, knowing I'd see it when I dusted, and it would be addressed to me, and it would say, "You are invaluable to this family, Hannah. We couldn't live without you." And then that crossed out in a new start with, "I hope you know how valued you are in this household," or things like that. And of course the letter never got finished and given to me because it was just meant for me to stumble upon. You see what I mean? He liked mysteries and puzzles. He liked things that weren't right out in plain sight. I don't know if I'm explaining it properly. Like, sometimes when he were in a good mood, he'd show me articles about what the spies did in the war. And he'd show me how they concealed messages inside film containers and shaving foam canisters and the like. He'd show me ciphers that were made out of code from books. You know, check page 300 of such and such a book and look down to a certain line and choose the first letter of the last word. Clever tricks like that. He showed me how you could find out what someone had written on a writing tablet by rubbing a pencil across it. The writing would show up from the pressure the pen had made.
Yes, of course. That's it, of course. Excuse me, Miss Higginbotham. I must return to the doctor's study.
Oh, all right. Have I answered your questions, then?
And then some, Miss Higginbotham. And then some.
Sergeant Roy joins Inspector McTavish in the doctor's study a few moments later.
That pencil you found in the drawer, and the writing tablet, if you please. Hannah gave me the idea. If we rub the pencil across the surface of this blank page, like so... yes, there we go, indeed. Just as I thought. Whatever was written on the top page has made an impression on the paper beneath. Aha, now we're on the trail. It's clear enough to read what it says.
What? Was he able to scribble down the name of his killer before he knocked off?
See for yourself.
I am a man more sinned against than sinning. What the devil is that supposed to mean?
The benefit of a classical education can never be overstated, Sergeant. Would you be so good as to hand me that book over there on the floor, the one we assumed he was reading when he was killed?
King Lear by William Shakespeare. Not what I'd consider light reading. Here you are, sir.
If my memory serves, we're looking for Act 3, Scene 3, is it? No, I tell a lie. It's Scene 2. Aha, here we are. A little scrap of paper tucked in between the pages.
Something's written on it.
Indeed. It reads, "Get thee glass eyes, and like a scurvy politician seem to see things thou dost not."
Oh, for the love of Pete, what is he talking about now?
Fear not, good sergeant. There is another line. It says, "The truth about..." The writing is smudged, but it looks like it says Messrs. Forrester and Smythe is to be found secured in an envelope beneath the desk drawer.
Well, why didn't he just write that in the first place? What's all this hullabaloo with King Lear and pencil rubbings?
As Hannah told me, the doctor enjoyed puzzles and games. I suspect this puzzle was not merely for fun, however. Help me remove this drawer, Sergeant. It's rather awkward. I suspect this little ruse was meant to conceal the truth from being discovered too soon.
Too soon? How do you mean, sir?
Look, an envelope taped to the bottom of the drawer, just as the note indicated. Let me see if my suspicions are correct. Aha! Oh, what a satisfaction to be right in one's suspicions, and the rare pleasure of being able to prove it.
You know who murdered him, from what's in these files?
Astonishing. It's not quite that simple, however. Yes. It all begins to make more sense. Give me a few moments, Roy. I must visit the Fox and Fiddle, and then to the registrar's office in town to confirm my last suspicion. If you please, gather everyone in the drawing room in exactly 2 hours.
Yes, sir.
Oh, and please, bring this machine downstairs with you. I shall have need of it at a particular time and would like to have it available. But not before then. Do you understand?
This bloody great thing on the desk? Here, sir?
The dictaphone machine, yes, Sergeant. It will be vital to the conclusion of this case.
If you say so, sir.
Has Inspector McTavish solved the case? Tune in next time as he reveals all to the assembled suspects.